The Tigers lose 1-9 to the Rangers last night. We're going to look at possible coaching candidates if the Pistons decide to move on from Monty Williams. And MSU basketball finally hires a new assistant coach. We break all that down on today's show.
And there's the snap. Blitz comes. Mayfield back. Loads. Throws. Picked up by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Reggie Miller. And it's blocked again. What a block.
Lead pass in for Larkin. In space for Raymond. And he scores! Lucas Raymond!
Welcome back to Detroit Sports Talk. Today's date is June 6th, 2024. I am your host, Bobby Buckets, and I want to thank you guys for taking the time to talk some Detroit sports today. Be sure to like the show, subscribe to the channel, comment below your thoughts on today's segments, and follow me on Twitter at Bobby Buckets. Updates across the sports world. I was updating my script as I do every day. And what I had here for yesterday was, looks like JJ Redick is going to be the coach of the Lakers. And that's because Shams Charania had a report that they were zeroing in. The Lakers were zeroing in on JJ Redick as the front runner. And then all of a sudden, boom, Woj bomb enters the chat. 4 a.m. Pacific time, Woj releases that the Lakers are going full court press for Dan Hurley. So they are preparing a long-term contract for Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley has admitted, or has at least spoken, that LA has reached out to him, but it's business as usual is what he said. But Dan Hurley, coach of the UConn Huskies, he has won back-to-back national titles. Very interesting. It's going to mix up the basketball world, college basketball, NBA basketball, if this is to go through and Dan Hurley is to join the Lakers. Also, there is a clip from Mike Golick's show yesterday, and it's interviewing JJ Redick. I only saw a clip on Twitter, but they asked him, like, hey, when are you going to discuss your coaching search, everything that you guys have been looking at from a team standpoint, just basically, when are you going to address the coaching search? And JJ said he was going to address not the coaching search, but Shams tweet specifically, he's going to address it after the finals. So to me, it kind of seems like JJ might have a little beef with Shams, because I wonder if JJ already knew that Los Angeles was going after Dan Hurley, and then Shams releases that news about JJ when JJ actually isn't the front runner. Just a very interesting dynamic that happened yesterday, this morning. So we're going to stay tuned to that, because specifically for me, and we'll get into this later in the show, I want JJ Redick as my top guy for the Pistons if Monty leaves. So I will be staying tuned to this as close as possible, because I'm super curious to see how this turns out. But let's go ahead and dive into our first segment. First segment today is reacting to last night's Tigers 1-9 loss to the Texas Rangers. So if there was ever a game to miss, if you missed last night's game, you picked the perfect game to miss. But Tigers are back to dead even, 500. They sit at 31-31. Kenta Maeda got the start last night. How many pitches did he throw? 2. That's right. Started and threw 2 pitches. I think I saw on Twitter that it was the least amount of pitches thrown by a starting pitcher in Tigers history. He had some sort of like abductor, like oblique injury, so he was trying to stay in, but Hinch came out there, took the ball from him, and just took him out to be safe. But 6 total pitchers threw for the Tigers, so that's how you know it was a bad night. 5 of them threw after Kenta got pulled 2 pitches in. Joey Wentz was credited with the L after taking over for Mayada. Didn't even make it through 3 innings. He gave up 4 hits, 3 runs, 4 walks, and 2 strikeouts. You had Mason Englert, who came in to pitch, gave up 3 runs. Andrew Chaffin came in for 1 out. Yes, that is correct. He pitched 1 out before he was then pulled after he gave up 3 hits and 3 runs. And your stud pitcher of the night is shortstop Zach McKinstry. That is right. He came in after Chafin, threw for 2 outs, gave up no hits, no runs. So that sums it up. You had 6 different pitchers, and you had a shortstop pitch. So that's how the game went. The only positive offensively was Justin Henry Malloy. So 2 things. Number 1, Justin Henry Malloy got his first MLB hit and his first MLB home run at the same time. He went yard to left center field, solo homer. If you have not seen it yet, go watch the clip of his parents as they are watching him as the ball hits the bat and takes off. His mom instantly knows that it's gone. His dad is watching. And as soon as it goes over the fence, they're getting all hype in the stands. They got a great clip of it. Just makes me very happy. It was a very heartwarming moment for his parents to be there. They were on the road in Texas. Malloy said his parents were going home after this game, so he was so happy that he was able to get that hit while his parents were there. So just a very, very cool reaction, a very wholesome, heartwarming clip there. I would also watch his post-game interview because he's just very genuine. He's very real, and he's just a very likable guy. So I'm rooting for the kid. He's very likable, and I hope, hopefully he's got a long career in Detroit. The second thing I want to address, Malloy had 2 hits, and it was the 2 hits for the entire day. For the entire team, basically. The rest of the team had 0 hits. So this team also never got a runner in scoring position. So those 2 hits were Malloy with a home run and Malloy with a single. Outside of that, nobody else got a hit to get on base. So frankly, it was a game to forget. Let's move on. We got a 3-game home series against the Milwaukee Brewers that starts Friday night and continues through the weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 home games against the Milwaukee Brewers. How many games do you guys think the Tigers will get out of that series? How many times do they beat the Brewers? Let me know in the comments below or over on Twitter. The second topic that we are going to discuss are possible head coaching candidates for the Pistons if they do move on from Monty. The only reason that I'm bringing this up is after the Dan Hurley news, because my number 1 guy is JJ Redick. I was convinced JJ Redick was going to the Lakers, so I really wasn't going to bring this up again until we got news of whether Monty was staying or leaving. But if Dan Hurley does get that job in LA and JJ Redick still doesn't have a job by the time we move on from Monty, I'm very, very curious as to, is he going to get an interview? Will he at least, is he at least going to be brought in? There are a lot of connections. So I think there's 4 candidates on this list of guys who have all interviewed for the Lakers job. But they are all 4 guys who have not been a head coach before. So that's what I'm sticking to with this list. And I'm going to put them in order from who I find to be the most intriguing to the least intriguing, even though all 4 are great candidates. My first candidate, just like we've talked about, JJ Redick. I've been on the JJ hype train ever since Trajan was hired. JJ is 39 years old. We all know about the Duke connection between Trajan and JJ. JJ was the one who broke Trajan's 3-point record at Duke. So Trajan originally held it until JJ came around and broke it in 2006. JJ Redick, when he was still playing, was the first player signed by the New Orleans Pelicans. And that was the first year when Trajan was GM in New Orleans. Arn Tellem, minority owner, and I forget his official title with the Pistons, but Arn Tellem was JJ's agent during JJ's playing career. And frankly, just from my perspective, watching JJ's podcast on YouTube, whether it's his show, whether it's the podcast with LeBron, he has modern philosophies that focus on three-point shooting and spacing, and that's what I want in a coach. I do not know what specifically Trajan is looking for in a coach, but the Pistons have been a poor three-point shooting team from a percentage standpoint and from an attempts per game standpoint that I would prefer. We are in the top half of the league in both percentage and attempts. So I hope Trajan is bringing in three-point shooters, which we all expect him to do, given there aren't many on this team. And then I would expect him to get a coach that wants to get up a lot of threes. That's not really Monty's thing. I think it would be JJ's thing. So just based on what I've heard in JJ's podcast about his philosophies, about how he brings up how important three-point shooting is, how important spacing is, I think he would follow through on that. And because I think that's so important in the NBA these days, that's why JJ's my number one guy. Number 2 is David Adelman. He's the lead assistant coach under Michael Malone in Denver. So he has been there for the past 5 years. He is 43 years old. We know all about the success that Denver has had recently. And I think the biggest thing for them is they set up their players for success by playing them to their strengths. One of the biggest complaints that we have had about Monty, the number one play type that Asar had last year was spot up shooting. It's not his strength, yet Monty's put him in that position to do what he is worst at. And we saw what happened, right? He shot 15, 18% from three, whatever it was. Whereas we've seen Denver work with guys like Bruce Brown, not known as like a knockdown shooter or somebody you fear from beyond the arc, but they found him kind of that Swiss Army knife role where they ended up winning a championship with Bruce Brown, where he was kind of like that do-it-all guy in the middle just doing the dirty work. They found a niche role for Bruce Brown. And I think with Aaron Gordon, they've done the same thing too, where they run that high-low look with Jokic at the elbow and keeping Gordon in the opposite side dunker spot to be able to throw that lob all the time. So maybe they do a pick and roll with Jokic. You hit Jokic on the short roll. He's at the elbow going to the rim. The help steps up, and then you've got the lob over the top to Aaron Gordon. So they put Gordon in the dunker spot because what is he good at? Finishing and dunking. So they've just had such good success. They seem to have modern philosophies. He's a younger coach, and they seem to put their players into positions that will lead to success. So David Adelman is my number 2 choice. Sam Cassell falls at number 3. So Sam Cassell actually played longer in the league than I thought. He played for 16 years, and he's 54 years old now. After his playing career, he instantly started coaching. So boom, retired from playing, instantly got picked up by Washington and Flip Saunders' staff. He was there for 5 years. After that, joined Doc Rivers' staff in LA with the Clippers, and he spent 6 years there. He then followed Doc to Philly and spent 3 years in Philly with Doc. So he coached with Doc for 9 years, and he has been on the Boston staff since then, so since 2023. So 16 years of playing, 14 years of being an assistant coach. That is 30 years of NBA basketball experience on the sideline and on the court. It's just good experience for a new head coach. Similar to how I thought Trajan was a good hire based on his resume, Sam seems to have that same kind of resume from a coaching perspective. So he's number 3 for me. My last one, number 4, is going to be Micah Nori. Micah Nori was not a player like all these other guys were. Actually, David Adelman wasn't a player either, so excuse me for that. But Micah Nori, not a player, has a master's degree in sports organization from the Miami, Ohio University. He's 50 years old. He started his coaching career as an assistant with the Toronto Raptors. He was there for 4 years, then went 2 years in Sacramento, 3 years in Denver. So he was there when Jokic was drafted, and he was actually the summer league coach when Jokic was playing in summer league. And then here's where the plot twist comes in. He became the lead assistant in Detroit with Dwayne Casey. So when Dwayne was here from 2018 to 2021, Micah Nori was the lead assistant and essentially served as the offensive coordinator. So after Detroit, when Dwayne stepped down or joined the front office, he joined Minnesota in 2021 as the lead assistant coach and has been there since then. So if you watch the finals after Chris Finch, the head coach of Minnesota, tore his patellar tendon, Micah Nori is the guy who was coaching that team while Chris Finch sat on the bench. So essentially the guy serving in the head coach role on the sideline was Micah Nori because Chris Finch had to sit behind the bench to take care of his torn knee. So Micah Nori has 6 straight years of being a lead assistant coach. He's got connections to Detroit already. Dwayne is still in our front office. So I think Micah would be a great candidate as well. They're really all 4 of them are good candidates. I would prefer to go with a guy who has not been a head coach yet, go with a guy who can grow with the team. James Borrego is also another guy who Ella has interviewed recently. He could be a good option, but I did not list him here because he had previously coached the Charlotte Hornets already. So who would you want to see hired as head coach if the Pistons move on from Monty Williams? Let me know in the comments below or over on Twitter. Our final segment will be about Michigan State basketball finally filling their assistant coach vacancy. I don't even remember how long this vacancy has been open for, but we have a vacancy after Mark Montgomery was hired as the new head coach at Detroit Mercy. So our new assistant coach is Saddi Washington. He is the hire, and let's talk about his history. So Izzo has known Saddi since he was a junior in high school. He has a great relationship with Saddi's family, and he has for a long time. Why is that the case? Well, Saddi's father, Stanley Washington, was a 3-time All-Big Ten player for the Spartans from 1963 to 1966. At the time, he finished his career second on the school's all-time scoring list. Saddi grew up in Lansing and played for Sexton High School, along with his younger brother also going to Sexton High School. If that school sounds familiar, that is because Denzel Valentine went to Sexton High School, located in Lansing. Saddi went on to play college ball at Western Michigan, where he scored more than 1,600 points. After that, he spent 10 years as an assistant coach under Greg Camp at Oakland. We all love Greg Camp as a coach. Love that Oakland got, their flowers after beating Kentucky in the tournament this year. After his Oakland tenure, Saddi moved on to be an assistant under John Beilein and then stuck around when Juwan Howard came. So he spent 8 years at U of M until Howard was dismissed in March. He was a big, important recruiting piece for Michigan, and he worked with the bigs. So that's the expectation of him coming to MSU. Be a guy who can help with recruiting. And then given, there are questions surrounding the big position group and they had to go get a transfer that year. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with the bigs and on the recruiting trail. So hopefully all that's going to work out at MSU for Saddi. But what are your thoughts on the Saddi Washington hire? Let me know in the comments below or over on Twitter. That is it for this episode of Detroit Sports Talk. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to talk some Detroit sports today. Be sure to like the show, subscribe to the channel, comment below your thoughts on today's topics, and be sure to follow me on Twitter at Bobby Buckets. Thanks again for taking the time to tune in. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.